Alrighty. So we have our comparative passage, and it looks like it's about the Renaissance and then plagiarism. So, you know, they're getting a little philosophical with us in that second passage, but it seems like this is like our comparative humanities. But they're still talking philosophically, it looks like, about plagiarism. So with these kinds of abstract passages, we just want to be able to tease out how would we put these terms in conversation with one another. What is something that passage A is talking about? How does passage B respond to it? Does it respond to it? Is it that friend who just takes like one idea and then goes somewhere completely different? Or are they directly in conversation? We're going to just kind of be feeling that out. And then with these, you know, we've got 1, 2, 3 paragraphs on that first one, and 1, 2, 3 paragraphs in the second one. So, you know, it's pretty manageable. We've got like a 3-piece argument for both paragraph A and paragraph B. So we're just going to try to think of what is the author trying to impart on us? What is baseline? What are they trying to say? And we'll just kind of go through real nice and slow and just understand. And then, oh, I forget, the newer ones tell us where these are adapted from. Not that that's like super important, but one is from a historian and another one is from a historian. So we may be comparing and contrasting these two in terms of their points of view on the topic, but we'll go ahead and see. Looks like the second historian is maybe commenting on the first historian, or whoever put their essays in the same book is comparing them. I don't know, we'll see. So passage A. In her 1996 History of Plagiarism in English Renaissance Drama, Laura J. Rosenthal tells us that her purpose is to question differences between plagiarism, imitation, adaptation, repetition, and originality. So they're just kind of contextualizing for us who this Rosenthal character is and what her purpose is. Rosenthal tells us her purpose. Cool. But such rhetorical questioning invariably leads to the required postmodern answer. So I've got a little bit of an issue here. They're saying that Rosenthal tells us what her purpose is, and it's to question a bunch of stuff. But that leads to a required postmodern answer. Don't know what that means yet, but to the author, this poses an issue. And that answer is that there is no difference between these things. So she's trying to find the difference between all of these things, but our author is saying there's an issue because it leads to there being no difference, other than that those in power use the opprobrious term plagiarism when the work in question emanates from those whom they dislike. Okay. So far we've got, you know, our author is introducing this Rosenthal person to us. She has her purpose, which is to question differences between all these different items having to do with plagiarism. Like, is it plagiarism? Is it imitation, adaptation, repetition, originality? How do we suss out like what is plagiarism, what's not? And the author is saying, well, there is no difference. And it's really ambiguous. There is ultimately no difference. But if you don't like someone, then you're going to say something is plagiarism. How are you doing with this first paragraph?
Good.
All right.
Cool. All right. Paragraph 2. Though the book is animated by a political fervor that is clearly moral, the author writes as if a political approach has to extirpate all moral considerations from any discussion of plagiarism. So, you know, the book is, you know, being driven by political excitement that, you know, all morally based, but the author, so our Rosenthal character, writes as if the political approach has to extirpate all moral considerations from any discussion. So we don't really know what extirpate means, but it sounds like it's they're removing all political ties from these moral considerations. What in moral terms is a matter of honesty or dishonesty, plagiarism being dishonest, is instead reduced to the cultural location of the text and the position of the author. So that last sentence helps us to figure out what this moral considerations and extirpating. I'm going to write that down. I want to learn what that word means. Sounds weird. But what that last sentence is telling us is that they've reduced a matter of dishonesty or honesty or dishonesty, our moral consideration, into the cultural location of text and position of the author. They've just made this into the political sense. Interesting. So paragraph 1, they're telling us, you know, here's this author. She questions the differences between different types of writings and whatever not. Ultimately, author of passage A is saying there's no difference between these things. It's all plagiarism. Plagiarism is a vague term. And if people don't like you, they say you plagiarized. And her book is saying that, you know, this is a moral question, but she's reduced it into more of a political question, talking about the text and position of the author. How are we doing so far? That one was a little wonky. Any questions on paragraph 2? All right. Last one. So now we're trying to see what in the world are they doing with this. So they gave us our author and introduced the question in paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 is starting to get to why is this an issue? What is she doing? And now we're trying to see where is paragraph 3 going. So it's hard to tell what the meaning of this passage is so far, but we can guess that, you know, we're probably going to be able to drive it home with paragraph 3. The consequence of a historical approach that seems to delegitimize the distinction between imitation and plagiarism. So they're giving us a consequence. So the consequence is that it demeans and degrades moral thought. We could have gotten that from the last paragraph because, you know, she's taking the moral thought out of everything. That no moral standard is universal does not of itself entail that moral standards are nothing but expressions of power. So they're saying no moral standard is universal, but that doesn't mean that moral standards are just expressions of power. Moral conventions, though not universal, may be valuable, indispensable, worthy of respect. So they're saying, you know, they're acknowledging that they're not, moral conventions are not universal, but they could still be valuable in themselves rather than just being a way that people express power. And if we think about the expression of power, that goes back to paragraph 1, where people use plagiarism however they want. They say the extirpation. Oh, that word. I feel like they're going to ask us a question on that word. I don't like it, but here we go. Where's that other one? Just so I know where it is. The extirpation of moral considerations from political history, such as this one, is a sad loss to political history. So we've got a little statement here from our author. It is a sad loss that we're taking the moral considerations out of this issue of plagiarism and we're making it just a political thing. So it seems like the author just really wanted to say this is a sad loss to political history. And we had to understand what was this Rosenthal author doing with the issue of plagiarism, and then how did she treat it so we could understand what's the problem and then get to why is this a loss. How are we doing with this passage?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Any questions? I feel like this one is like that classic third passage where it's just, difficult. They make it difficult on purpose because you're getting tired, getting to the end. And this is, I mean, in this case, this is section 1. I think it's probably different sections for other people, but man, okay. Compare passage 2. We're trying to think, how is passage 2 going to line up with passage A? So passage A, if we think about what happened in paragraph 1, that's like our introduction to the author. What's the problem going on? They introduce our topic of plagiarism. Paragraph 2 is explaining how she treats her treatment of plagiarism, and why, like, she separates out, you know, this is not a moral issue, this is a political issue. Then paragraph 3, it talks about the consequence. So now we're going to think, how does passage B think about this issue of plagiarism? And if we remember, you know, based on our notes, Christopher Ricks is a historian, and you know, in the second passage, you know, this other historian appears in the same book. So they might be being compared, they might be compared or contrasted. So we might be trying to see, are they similar in idea? Are they different in idea? Let's see. The idea of plagiarism, like all ideas, has a history. So that's a pretty strong statement. Plagiarism and all ideas have history. I might just highlight that whole sentence. To earlier generations, it had semantic inflections and resonances different from those we recognize today. So plagiarism to our earlier generations had semantic inflections, so and resonance is different. So it seems like different earlier generations had different ideas of what plagiarism was versus today. So we got a little comparison going on. What was plagiarism viewed as before, and how do we recognize it today? The varied impulses behind these varying views, which have themselves evolved in response to commercial circumstances, new theories of artistic creation and developments in copyright law. Okay, so they're saying, we've got different reasons why these views have changed, and then they list a few. The varied impulses behind these varying views have repeatedly complicated judgments of plagiarism. So this person is saying, oh, there's some issues here with plagiarism. And I feel like I'm highlighting a lot more because there's a lot more dense stuff in here, just so we can kind of get at what is our main topic sentence. And they're saying, there's all these new things in our modern world that have changed how we view plagiarism. Despite an abiding sense that plagiarism is morally wrong, so both passages would agree that it's morally wrong, there has been much fluidity in the way the charge has been applied, and virtually identical acts of illicit appropriation have been sometimes denounced, sometimes excused, and sometimes praised. So we're talking about the history of plagiarism in this first paragraph, and we're talking about the change between the olden view of plagiarism and the new view. But basically, we've got all these changes because we have all these new developments in our current society. But passage A and passage B both agree that plagiarism is morally an issue. It's morally wrong, and that it's pretty fluid. And how does passage A refer to it? They say it's opprobrious. I might just highlight that word. I like that word, opprobrious. And they're getting a sense of it's vague. And here they're saying it's fluid. There's much fluidity. So we got some agreements between passage A and passage B about what is plagiarism, how does it work, and what are some issues with it. It can be used in a very fluid way because no one quite agrees. But they both authors, I should say, agree that it is morally wrong. How are we doing with this paragraph? This one was a toughie.
All right.
Doing okay? All right. Let's get to the next page. It's going to put us there. Okay. Christopher Ricks. So our author in the first one, Christopher Ricks, is suspicious of historical approaches to ethical issues. Okay, so this author came right out and they want to talk about Christopher, not necessarily plagiarism. Okay, our boy Chris is getting attacked here. So Christopher Ricks is suspicious of historical approaches to ethical issues. Okay. To him, emphasis on change across generations produces an extenuating moral relativism that shields the evil of plagiarism from its due obloquy. Oh boy, obloquy. I have no idea if that's how you pronounce it. But basically, our boy Christopher doesn't really like how people treat the ethical issues historically. And emphasis on change across generations creates moral relativism. So, there's no moral right or wrong, which is where passage A started to go in the end. Got this moral relativism that shields the evil of plagiarism from its due something. No idea what that O word means. But there are historical approaches, and there are historical approaches, and there are historical approaches. That's a weird sentence.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I was like,
the first time.
Yeah, is there something wrong with this? Oh, I guess that's just what it is. So I'm stumped. I don't know. I can only imagine taking this test. Oh my gosh. So what's going on is, you know, our Christopher dude doesn't like how we treat ethical issues historically. And then, you know, his issue is that there's a moral relativism. So there's no set moral code. Everyone kind of interprets these things differently morally. And we don't see the evil of plagiarism. So she's talking about his view. She's giving him some views, saying that plagiarism is an evil, like an objective evil. And I guess it's due obloquy might mean that there's either a punishment for it, or that we should, you know, that's like our public being able to all recognize it. Who knows? We don't really need it there. It says, but there are historical approaches and there are historical approaches. So I guess our author is kind of discounting this. We have our transition word there. And they're saying, well, there's more historical approaches and there's more historical approaches. So this issue is not going to end. He might be suspicious of our historical approaches, but yet everyone is using them. All right, how do we feel about that paragraph?
Good.
All right.
Good. So paragraph 1, you know, there we're getting our idea is, you know, the history of plagiarism. We start to see a lot of the commonalities between these two authors. And then paragraph 2, she just goes in talking about Christopher Ricks. That's our author in paragraph A, and, you know, trying to give us, you know, what does Rick think? What does Christopher Rick think about, you know, this moral relativism, plagiarism is evil? And then we get to paragraph 3. So, you know, they're still setting up. So it seems like in this passage, we're going to get more of our main point in this 3rd paragraph as well, because mostly they've given us background information. So paragraph 3, Ricks is rightly dismissive of the postmodern reduction of moral standards to expressions of power. Okay, so we see that they both agree. You know, the author is saying, yeah, totally correct in saying that it's a reduction of moral standards to power. That's exactly what was being said in A, and passage B, the author agrees. And it is also true that there has been some shoddy scholarship, ooh, that's some strong language, that anachronistically projects modern day ideologies having to do with gender, race, or class onto historically remote controversies. Okay, so we see our author says it's also true that there's been some really terrible scholarship. I love that shoddy scholarship. Got some opinions in here. Projects modern day ideologies onto historically remote controversies. So we're getting this issue that people are trying to take the ideas of today, probably we can infer with respect to plagiarism, and trying to put it onto historically remote controversy. So stuff going on way back when. Yet, we got another transition word, yet bad history is no argument against history itself. Okay, so we're saying, you know, we can't, just because we're looking at the history wrong, just because we're trying to put the modern day into old situations, we can't just say that that's invalid. We have to kind of just deconstruct it. To reconstruct the attitudes of the past is not necessarily to vindicate them. It is merely to acknowledge that whatever we might think is the correct way of apprehending plagiarism, and there is hardly consensus on the matter even today, our predecessors might not and often did not share our perspectives. So they're saying, you know, we shouldn't be trying to get back at what the old attitude on plagiarism was. It's not really going to help us, but all we're doing is acknowledging that, you know, whatever we think is correct is different than what older generations might have thought. Our predecessors often not and did, may not and often not did. Oh my goodness, too many words. The old people didn't agree. People from centuries ago did not necessarily agree with us. So we've got paragraph 1, you know, they're introducing plagiarism. We're starting to get into, you know, here's how passage A and passage B start to agree. They get into paragraph 2 and they focus in on the author of passage A and they say, okay, he's suspicious of historical approaches to ethical issues, but, you know, we approach these things all the time with historical approaches. Ricks thinks that plagiarism is a pure evil, but, you know, moral relativism moral relativism means that we're not going to see it as such. And then in paragraph 3, they give him some concessions. They say, yeah, he's right to dismiss everything, you know, as an expression of power. You know, that's true. I would agree with that as passage B. And then they also say that, you know, scholarship hasn't been the best in this issue. So Ricks is not wrong. But, you know, you can't just throw out all these arguments just because it seems like history is not being taken care of. The scholarship is bad. We just have to acknowledge that here's how we view plagiarism. Other people might not have agreed with that in the past. We just have to acknowledge that they're different, not that there's anything wrong with the historical approach. How are we doing? How did this feel?
Good.
Really.
Any questions
A lot.
before we? It is a lot. It is a lot. This is especially with this last passage. They're hoping that you're getting tired around this point and that you start to panic. But it's okay. We got this. All right.
I was
how do
very
I?
panic.
No panicking. I rebuke the panic. All right. So number 14, both passages are concerned with answering which one of the following questions. We'll just take like a couple minutes. You can chat me or you can talk. Up to you. I don't know how best y'all work together, but we'll just give everyone like a minute and a half to collect their thoughts.
Whenever I did this, I picked E.
Yeah, me too.
Because that
picked
was
C.
like the only one that I felt that was talked about in the passage, like in both passages.
Agreed.
I like C,
See? Okay.
but I'm not sure about C. I don't know.
All right. So if we look at A, how did the modern concept of the author develop in previous centuries? We don't care about the concept of the author. Nice. B, during what historical period did moral strictures against plagiarism originate?
Mm-mm.
We never talked about when this was.
Right.
Moral strictures originating. Oh, I don't know about that. C, how has the relationship between moral standards and power changed over time? So this one is looking really compelling because we know both of them talk about moral standards and power, but we don't get how they've changed over time.
Right.
Right?
That's what threw me off. They changed over time.
Yeah, and if you're not liking it, don't hold on to it. Just let it go.
Mhm.
Let it go. Okay. What are the significant differences between plagiarism and simple imitation? You know, they mentioned that these are two different things, but they don't talk about the differences in A. So E, how is the moral dimension of plagiarism to be understood historically? This one is looking really, really nice because we see that in A, they're saying historically, we can't look at this historically, like everything is a lie. They've been taking this out of context. You know, they're only looking at it as a political thing. They're not looking at it morally. And then in passage B, they're saying, well, you can't just throw out the historical approach because, you know, just because it's bad history doesn't mean it's totally, you know, worth throwing away.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll take E as our answer.
Oh, okay. I see why that's right now.
Yeah, that changed over time is like really like that's the key word here. And moral dimension. I think if they had said moral code, it might be a little tough because it's a little too narrow, but moral dimension is just saying, how do we look at this morally?
Yeah, that's
They're
why I
using
didn't
some
pick C,
complicated
because of the
language.
change over time.
Alrighty. Next one. Number 15. The authors of the two passages would be most likely to agree that what? So you know they do have quite a few agreements in paragraph. Well, quite a few agreements between both of them.
Hold on.
I got this one wrong, so I'm trying to figure out the right answer.
Me too.
I did too.
I figured it found a historical.
You got it wrong too, Kiki?
Yeah. Originally,
I did too.
I picked B whenever
I picked what is this, 15? I picked A and then I picked C.
Okie dokie.
Can you scroll down a little?
Yeah.
Historical scholarship that focuses on changes in attitude.
Mm.
Ultimately, no. Oh, E.
E. Yeah.
Did you say D or E?
E like Edward.
A. Yeah.
I haven't heard that name in a while. Edward. All right. So what told us that it was an A? Despite widely held beliefs to the contrary, there is no significant difference between plagiarism and imitation.
That's only in one passage. That's only in passage A.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Good. What about B? The fact that no moral position is universal suggests that moral standards are ultimately little more than manifestations of power.
I think that was only
More. Little.
no, that
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, the ultimate little more
Power.
than manifestation of power. That right
that
there.
was in A. They talked
Mhm.
about power manifestation in A. I don't know about B,
Yeah,
but I
don't
know it
think
was in
in
A.
B.
Yeah.
Right. So both of these are really good points, like little more.
Mhm.
That's something, it's like you could argue, like, what's the line? Little, like, I don't know, maybe like little more only. Are those close
Mhm.
enough? But the manifestations of power, like this whole conversation, you're correct, only happens in passage A. Okay, C. Currently widespread views regarding plagiarism are more stringent than the views held by most of our predecessors.
Only B talked about that part of the
I think it was like
consequences.
the paragraph 3,
3,
passage
yeah,
B.
at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
one of the last sentences or
Yeah.
something like that.
Good.
So
And in A, they just talk about different views. So a lot of people would pick C because they're like, well, they talk about like us having different views than previous generations. But you're right. Only B talks about, our views being more strict. D, historical scholarship that focuses on changes in attitudes towards plagiarism ultimately absolves plagiarists of responsibility for their actions.
mm-mm.
Latoya
That-
shook her
mm. I think that's only an A. And they didn't talk about changes.
Changes in attitudes.
Mhm.
I would actually argue that this doesn't come up at all. We don't say that
Right.
plagiarists are right because both authors agree that it's a moral wrong.
Mhm.
And historical scholarship, it's reducing everything. So they're kind of distracting us from the moral issue. But E, an inferior kind of scholarship practiced today has a tendency to project current ideological preoccupations inappropriately into the past. There's a lot of strong language here. Inferior, inappropriately. I love it. I love strong language.
But I feel like both of the passages, they both have strong language.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
great. I was like, oh, give me all the opinions. So this one, we know that, in passage A, our Christopher Ricks guy doesn't like the historical scholarship. He's like, you're making it too historical. Don't like the historical approach. And then in B, they're saying, I think they say in paragraph 2, it's shoddy scholarship. Where's my other
Mhm.
passage? Where'd it go? I have no idea how to use this.
Oh, it's that one.
It's right there. It's on the side. Yes.
I kept missing the passage B part. So it says we've got, shoddy scholarship, my favorite phrase of this passage. And they both talk about, putting our current ideologies into the past to look at these. Okay, stop. All right. Number 16, which one of the following is a central purpose common to both passages? I found a new way to phrase that question. Primary purpose, central purpose, love it.
I went with B on this one.
Same.
How did you feel about this one, Kiki?
This one wasn't bad. Yeah, I had chose B.
Okay. All right. So if we look at our other answer choices, To trace the historical development of an important idea. We didn't quite go tracing it. They just say that there was some changes. B, to find fault with a way of approaching a scholarly topic. So in A, you know, they definitely are finding fault with this idea of the historical part. But in B, you know, then they find fault with, you know, how does Christopher deal with these things? Half of what he does, you know, they understand it and they agree with it. And then they give us some nuance. So they're not really finding a fault with the same scholarly topic. So a lot of people would pick B for that reason. I guess you could, well, actually, we do find fault with putting the past into the present, or no, the present into the past and vice versa. I do like B, actually. I take it back. To exam, I was like, I just have to think out loud. I'm an outward processor, which is why I like the test. Like, I'll be like, I would mutter to myself. Thankfully, I think the proctor was like gone. Like, I wasn't trying to like record anything, but I was like, what do I think about this passage? I have no idea. Like, I just be talking to myself this whole time. C, to examine shifting scholarly attitudes towards a particular topic. So, you know, we are looking at shifting attitudes, but that's not the central purpose. That it's part of the argument. D, to explain why a type of scholarship has become dominant. They're not explaining why. And then E, to argue that a particular book is deeply problematic. So we could say that that's, you know, with B, they're saying that there are some problems, but I don't know if we could go so far as to say deeply. And it's just not both passages. So we would pick
like
B.
how I got B because all the other answer choices are just so off the wall.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Wait, I have a question though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wasn't just passage A talking about a book, or was passage B a book as well?
So
It's all about a book.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Basically, these are remarks towards the books. Like the first passage is an introduction written about the book, and then passage B is talking about the person who wrote the introduction for the book.
Good.
And examining the book as well.
Okay, because that's why I took that one out, because I was like, I don't think they were talking about a book. But I mean, I got it right, so that's all that matters.
And I think too, like, even if it was in the passage, like, you were like, that's not the main point. It's like you glossed over it enough to know that it wasn't important that they were talking about a book. You were focusing in on the ideas. But, all right, we're rolling through this. This is great. All right, 17. By using the phrase political fervor, right there in that blue, the author of passage A suggests that Rosenthal exhibits what? It's like a trip on the author opinion question.
Well, I believe we all got this one wrong.
I didn't.
Okay.
Oh, you didn't?
Oh
yeah, I remember. Never mind. Well, Kiki,
I got it wrong.
For this one, I picked C.
I picked A.
I picked B.
I don't know why I picked C. Let me try to remember.
Okay.
The powerful desire to foster political revolution. Dang, that's strong.
It is. We got powerful desire to foster revolution. That's more strong words than not. Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's why I picked that one. I don't know why I picked that one. I think because that one looked better whenever
it was a security blanket of strong words. No, I'm serious. Like, oftentimes we'll pick something that like seems really like strong and inspiring and compelling, and then we realize, it's too strong to be right. So if we think about political fervor, the book is animated by a political fervor that is clearly moral. So I don't know if we go so far as to say that they're trying to start a political revolution.
Yeah. Right? I should have picked revolution.
Yeah, it's like it just takes one word to alter the course of the whole meaning, and then you got to take it out. D, a passionate eagerness to provoke heated debate.
I didn't like that one.
See, why didn't you like that?
I liked it because, like, I knew that the author was opposed to the whole idea of like the plagiarism and everything like that. So the heated debate is what sold me.
The heated debate about what?
That's the part that made me eliminate it, because it's not asking for an additional opinion or setting up a debate. So I eliminated that for that reason.
And we can be really picky with these, because I think it's like, okay, that looks good. Like, you know, there would be a debate if we're talking about plagiarism and everyone else thinks it's not that bad, but we put a lot of assumptions in there. We're thinking, oh, it makes so much sense that there would be a debate about this thing. But if the text didn't say that there was a disagreement, or, you know, that there was a resulting like impact, we got to leave it out. I can see where they probably split everyone really widely on this one. E, a heartfelt support for a political party.
No.
Everyone's shaking their head. Good. Good. They're hoping, like, heartfelt support. That seems a little too warm and fuzzy for this passage. Then we got A and B. So B, an intense ambition to exercise influence over public policy. We got some strong hitches. Well, why are we talking about public policy here?
Yeah.
I don't know about that, y'all. So A, a zealous determination to transform traditional categories of thought.
Right. I like that one because it said, when it says in the last, in passage B, it says that our predecessors may not and often did not share our perspectives. That to me said that they're trying to change that thought, but not really. I don't know, but that one just stood out.
I think that's good. Like, yeah, and I think that's a really good way to link that back. Transforming traditional categories, like we're reaching into the past and trying to change what's going on here. And then zealous determination, I think, you know, political fervor, that's great. Absolutely great. Because fervor and zeal, they're synonymous. And determination, I guess we could put that in there too. How are you feeling about this question?
Okay.
Okay.
We're just steamrolling these questions. Okay. 18. It can be inferred that the author of passage B regards the historical approach of the author of passage A as what? I love these kind of questions.
So for this one, I remember when I was doing it, I was just going, like I was crossing out the answers, and I went with D.
Okay.
But I wasn't too sure that D was gonna be, just because of the word that it said, like simplistic.
I initially got this one incorrect. I chose C because I was like, it can't be simplistic. I was between C and D, and then I realized, oh, okay. I don't know, I just thought the words were too much.
I feel like they should have picked like a different word.
A different word, yeah. And I tried to insert it into a passage A to see how it would fit. And the only thing that came to me was deceitful. But then I was like, oh no, it didn't say it was deceitful. I don't know.
Right. And what's hard is that, like, we could plug it into A, but it's how passage B's author views passage A.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's what tripped me up with this one. But then once I went through it, I was like, oh, I could see when he starts talking about the other author, he's like, oh, but he really doesn't understand. So
yeah,
he just simple-minded. That's how I took it. And I was like, oh, okay.
I didn't like necessarily see it as simplistic, but like I see how like he just was opposed to the author's view. But everything else just seemed like too strong.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So it sounds like we didn't like irresponsible. Nobody kind of veered that way. Incomprehensible. Well, to write a whole passage on someone else's thoughts, it sounds like you do comprehend it.
Right.
And then deceitful. I'm like, okay, maybe simplistic. Reprehensible. Did anyone like this at any point, or did we just kind of shake our heads?
I eliminated that one immediately.
Yeah,
I was like, whatever. Wouldn't it be irreprehensible? Like, I was just like, nah. Immediately, like straight out the gate.
All right. So then there were two. So if we think about what? So if we think about what's going on here, So we have, the paragraph 1 or in passage B is, ideas have a history, blah, 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 blah. Paragraph 2, we got our Christopher Ricks guy. He's just like, this guy is suspicious of the historical approach. And this is why. He knows that there's like an objective evil, but there are more historical approaches. There are historical approaches. And so the guy, like, the author is kind of pointing out that this guy doesn't like the historical approach, but here's like onslaughts of historical approaches. We just keep applying them. And then, he says he's rightly dismissive. So if we think about, the author saying he's dismissive and rightly so, if he were deceitful, that'd be a little too strong and not quite the same. And simplistic doesn't fit there either, but we can see dismissive. Why is he dismissive? They're saying that there's shoddy scholarship. There's all this stuff happening with bad history. And then our author says bad history is no argument against history himself. And so what Ricks is doing is throwing out all this stuff, throwing out all the history, making the argument that we have an argument against history, even though it's bad history. And so it's not necessarily deceitful because we don't know who he's deceiving, but he is being simplistic in saying, if this is bad history, then there is no history at all. That's a flaw. But it's also, he's over reducing it. He's reducing it way too much to be way too simple. He's made it way too simple. And that's a flaw, actually. So we would go with D. Because C, deceitful, that requires him deceiving other people intentionally. But it sounds like, there's no outside people that he's trying to convince, that he's trying to lie to. He's not trying to swindle them in any way. But what he's done is he's just made this way too simple of an issue and then just said, like, if it's bad history, then I can't have history at all. Or at least that's how B is presenting it.
When I went back through and reread this, I actually associated D with the line of, but there are historical approaches and there are historical approaches. Like, it's simple. You know what I'm saying? Like the way Ricks thinks is simple. Mm. And I was like, oh, that's how that sentence ties into it. Because it's just a simple thought.
Maybe.
That's what I think.
I'm like reading this. Especially for approaches, ethical issues, emphasis, producing extended shields. Okay. I think that would be really interesting because it says to him, we have this emphasis on change, and there's a moral relativism that shields evil plagiarism from whatever this is over here. But this is how it is.
Right.
I like that. Nice. Look at us. Alrighty. Number 19. Passage A asserts that the inevitable answer to the question raised in Rosenthal's book is that blank. So
I got this one right, like immediately.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Freedom.
That recall.
Yeah. Because I know the question was, what's the difference between plagiarism, imitation, and all of that or whatever. So
yeah.
And then they said the answer or whatever, but then I thought, okay, passage A also said, but it's no different. So it is what it is. So I went with B immediately. Yeah. And I just moved on. I didn't even second guess that one.
Oh yeah. And that one's like knowing where to look. Very nice. I mean, if we think about political history must avoid, we don't have any opinion there about must avoid engaging. C, moral conventions are worthy of respect. That's a lot of opinion there. No. There has been much fluidity in the way the charge of plagiarism has been applied. So this one looks interesting because a lot of people would say, oh, well, technically this is what the author thinks. But we don't, that's not the answer to the question. So this is otherwise true.
That's in passage B, though.
Passage B.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like, passage. There's two sub passages. But here it's like, okay, that does occur, but that's not the answer to the question.
Right.
And then E, bad history is not an argument against history itself. I love that line, but that's in passage B. I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you finish, but all right. Look at us. We're on that last question. So which of the following most accurately characterizes the relationship between the two passages? So this is our classic comparative compare-contrast question. They want to know, how do these two things link?
So for this one, I run out of time.
It's okay.
So
It's
let me
okay.
see.
And just let me know if you want me to scroll down.
Okay, can you scroll down a little? I'm gonna go with C.
For this one, I went with D, but I was between E and D. So I reread those, and then I thought that E was way too strong with all of the assertions made.
Let me go back to
Also,
yellow.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely was between C and D here. I was like, errors in the details or an unjustifiable extreme. Let me go back to A. B recommends an approach to historical scholarship. I don't know if we recommend it necessarily. And then the historical analysis in past day conforms to the recommendation. Absolutely not. A came first. B is reaction to A. B, passage B advances an argument that is undermined by the evidence offered in passage A. Someone pick B? No. Okay.
I eliminated B because it said evidence offered in A.
Great. Now C and D, there were two. So why did we not like C?
The overall group argument.
Oh, I eliminated C because it said supports the overall argument. That's why I eliminated C.
And it also indicates past A errors in some of its details. I think, errors, you could probably get away with that, but some of its details is going to be the other key to that, to eliminating that one. It's not keys like in the details. It's like it's the author or passage A's author's like thoughts and reductionist technique. So we go with D. Passage B concurs. We agree. Oh, I don't want all of that. Go away. Concurs with certain views in passage A. So they do agree with certain views, but then also suggest the author carries the position to an unjustifiable extreme. So I love how they say unjustifiable extreme because that's some extreme language right there. But they're saying, if we remember, they said that our boy Charlie or whoever his name was that right? I don't know why. Christopher. So I was like, too many C names. Christopher Ricks is very dismissive but very reductionist, so making it way too simple. So if we got that from our other questions, that passage A would see it as simplistic, that's a little too extreme for us. So we'll go with D. Look at us.
I answered. This one was easy once I looked back up at the other questions choices, like number 17. I got zealous, determination. That's for the political fever. And then 16 helped answer this one for me as well.
Right.
So that's what kind of helped me answer 20.
Definitely. And that's like such a valid tactic too. Not a lot of people remember that they can look at their other questions to kind of help them out there.
Yeah, I just figured that out last night.
I'm gonna do that.
Literally.
We did it. I'm so excited. We did it. I want to make sure we can also get to other questions that you might have too. If it's on here or other random sections.
Okay, time to go back to bed. Bye. Just kidding.
That's so funny.
Girl, I've been up working since 6 o'clock this morning.
I aspire to get to that level, but I also am like, If I have one of those insomniac nights, like, oh gosh,
Right.
I'm done for.
Right.
I gotta nail down this LR in reading, and I'll
Yeah,
be good.
I
Like,
think
oh
they
my
have
god,
questions about LR.
who
Y'all,
LR whooping my butt straight up.
I know,
Like
but Jasmine said that
strength
we
and
can
weakness. I'm
ask
doing
questions.
LSAT Max the videos. I'm gonna
Mhm.
watch those and get my questions together, and
Okay.
that way we can do that. Because right now I'm just kind of lost. I'm kind of going back to the basics on those. Like
Yeah.
it's strengthening and weakening. Paradox, I'm good with that.
Mhm.
And there was something else.
Flaw.
Flaw, yeah, flaw. Definitely flaw.
Mhm.
The
And
only thing
those
I
with
remember
flaw
about flaw is,
questions,
oh my god, it's just crazy.
there's just so many types of flaws that it's like the best way to get through those is just to keep practicing them so you get exposed to them all.
Oh, I know what I had a question about. Let me find it. I wrote it down too. What is that? Hold on. Oh, it's in my games that I did from this test. Okay. We had a question. I think it was number 17. What was it? Oh no, it was number 7.
Oh, the
In
necessary
LR
assumption, section 3.
section 3. No, we was trying to figure out what type of question type it was. Hold on.
For number,
Oh, I think you're talking about 5, maybe.
Let me see.
No, it's
Hold
not
on.
5.
It was a flaw question that
It was 4.
weird.
It was
4.
number 4. A questionable technique used in the club president's reasoning is. That was the question stem.
I think it's a flaw.
yeah, it's a
Oh, that's a
questionable
flaw.
technique that's like a flaw in the reasoning because they're talking about the reasoning here. Questionable means it's vulnerable to attack.
So vulnerable to criticism.
Mm-hmm.
That's another way of saying that. Oh, okay. I got it right, but I was confused about the, like, what are you asking me? Like, is this a paradox or is this a flaw question or is it a weakening question? That's what kind of threw me off. But I got it right because everything else looked wrong. But when I chose answer choice B, I was like, it has to be a flaw because it's saying the sample is unrepresentative.
Good. And
So
I
that's the
think
only reason I got it right.
If this was a weakening question, they might say, like, which of the following, like, our answer choices would look very different, but they would say, which of the following answer choices would exploit a questionable technique in the argument or exploit the flaw? Or they might just say, like what weakens the argument?
If I saw
here they
exploits, I would know weaken.
Yeah, but here they just say questionable technique. So this is like something that exists in the passage already that is just, it affects the reasoning. So that anytime, like, because the flaw is inherent to the paragraph. So that's going to definitely be a flaw. And I think they're probably getting really creative on the rest of these too, these exams to make sure that we aren't just memorizing question steps. I'm like, oh, gross.
But, I think it was so funny for this test because, like, a lot of them, they had like you had to repeat the same answer choice and they were correct. And I feel like for me, I didn't change my answers though. But like if I wouldn't have thought about what you said last time, I feel like I would have like actually like changed one of my answers, thinking that they were like wrong.
Yeah, they're gonna pull every dirty trick. Bless you. They're pulling every dirty trick to make sure that you don't get stuff right.
Yeah, but I did change number 7. I changed 7 because I was like, no, this is just ridiculous. I went and changed it and it was right. So I was mad.
Yeah, I mean, if like just base it off of what do you know out of the questions, and if you have to guess B or C. But
that's why I'm changing my answers.
Yeah, B or C are like the most common answer choices statistically. Not saying that you should always just base it off of B or C. Like if you can narrow it down, great. But if you're between two, and one looks weirder than the other, don't choose it just because it's B or C. But if it's B or C, it's like, okay, statistically, you're probably gonna get right answer. You know, it's looking pretty good. But trust your skills, trust how much studying you've done, because I think, you know, we talk ourselves out of everything, and really the test is just designed to make us talk ourselves out of every right answer. That's all it is.
I agree with that. Let's see a couple of answers I changed.
Yeah, that's what I have to stop doing. Like, I'll second guess myself, and I'll be between two answers, and then end up choosing the wrong one last minute.
I stopped doing that.
Good.
Because I've been losing points because of that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I lost,
like every now and then you just kind of have to tell yourself, stop. We're not touching it. Like, I'll flag it and come back to it later.
Unless unless I'm like 100% sure that if I change it and it's correct, like that's why I do it. Yeah. But if I'm unsure, like I stop doing that.
Good.
Man, that junk cost me like at least 5 to 7 points. I know it did, because I was unsure. But I didn't change anymore. I changed like 2 that I know of, but I was unsure. And I just was like, this looked better. Even though in my head, I still was like, I don't know. I don't think this looks better. So I can mess myself up with that. I could have been in the 153 range. I feel like this test wasn't too bad. Yeah.
But this is
I'm redoing it though.
I'm gonna do logic games just because I want to get the boost of like having to do like a lot of work.
Oh my God, it was a lot of work with these games, a lot of worlds, a lot of diagramming. But I only missed 4.
Really?
Yeah.
I
only missed 4, but I was good to go.
I missed 2 in there.
I missed 3.
Yeah, it wasn't bad at all.
I think my RC has improved a lot because I only missed like 5 or 6 questions in like the 3 passages. I mean the last one, I guess. But like it has improved, and I think I just need to work on my time so I can try to get like at least to the last passage and like answer some of the questions.
I got to the last passage, but only like finished 2 questions. So.
And then
games
LR,
look fun.
like, I'm okay with LR. I only missed 8 on LR.
It's 16